lot going on in Trump's second term. So click the links, join my channel here over at SubScribestar. Joyless, Reid, Lester Holt, and some others. What's going on with the globalist media? And thank God we still have Jeremy Toobin and Brian Seltzer. Oh, joy. I guess they turned out to be so indispensable that they had to hire them back. So maybe hope springs eternal for Joy and Lester. Though, Brian Seltzer, I can understand having him come in and out of the corporation. Jeremy Toobin, though, I mean, bad turn of phrase for him. He should have been out and permanently out. Some things are just not. You can't look at somebody and go, "So you were you were enjoying yourself on a live stream with your coworkers who, as an aside, were just hideously ugly." You can't come back from that. You just have to retire. So I'm sure she was being called. Well, I was going to say called into a conference with an executive, but I somehow suspect that this was done over the phone, where she was home and then she was just told the show was over and just, delivered any items she had in the office or changing room from security, so there wasn't a scene that, would go on social media. But I'm sure that when she was on the phone with the executive, she was expecting the next sentence to be, "Well, the show is canceled, but we're going to put you on a panel show in the morning to switch things up until the audience settles down after the Trump election and figures out what they want." Or say, why don't you take 2 months off and we'll get another time slot and a panel show to kind of reintroduce you back in the audience. Because in her mind, she's a big star. The problem being that the audience is not agreeing with her. It wasn't like with Don Lemon, where he was put on a morning panel show for a little while before he finally got kicked off for insulting women. He assumed he had gay black privilege, but you can't be on a talk show for women and insult women. That's living in an echo chamber where your privilege only goes so far. The female audience runs certain shows, and they have memories like elephants, and they'll get on social media and they'll spread the word, and suddenly his cute gay black token act doesn't work anymore, and he got fired. Lucky for me, I love and respect women, and I'm very delicate in how I approach the fair and gentle sex with these videos, because otherwise they'll yell at me in the Odyssey comments, and it's humiliating. Anyway, even I know in some areas women have control, and you just have to let that is what it is. You just have to mind your P's and Q's. Now, Don Lemon is doing his own interviews, which is fine. He gets ignored a lot, which is brutal to watch. Honestly, I'd feel bad for him, because the vibe of the second term of Trump seems to be that the audience is tired of the hysteria. And I get a lot of gifts in the mailbox from women, including some of the favorite keyboard I use and the coolest beanie I got. It's got some like Norse symbology, kind of like, that kind of alt-right type of stuff. It looks friggin' awesome. So in the first term, there was a larger percentage of leftists who had legitimate TDS, where they lost, where it was, pathological, when it's like an actual medical condition, where it seems like they lost their minds, and it almost wasn't really their fault because they were brainwashed by the media to think that Trump was Satan come to earth. So you had to have people who broke with reality, and it took them several years to calm down, and some of them did. They returned to normalcy when they saw that Trump didn't have, the 7 heads predicted in Revelation. And what helped their recovery is the absolute disaster that Biden and Blowjob Queen were. That inflation started to sober them up, and they still hated Trump, but when the other option is Kamala, they were kind of crapping themselves because they didn't know what to do. Those are like the 2 worst options if you're on the left. They're not free to say that diversity is cancer and that she should immediately be deported back to her, I don't know, wherever she comes from, Puerto Rico, I think. I actually have a picture with her, and we were both much skinnier back in the day. A lot of people have photos with her because what she was doing in the East Bay at the time. But in mine, she was dressed. Anyway, the left started to look at Trump and understand that there were worse things than literally Lucifer. And that was Kamala, because she was too incompetent to be in charge of hell. At least Trump would get things done. So after 7 years, some of them started to recover from TDS. And the push to get behind Kamala, what an unfortunate turn of phrase, just wasn't in it. Nobody really wanted that cackling hyena, and she's always been like that. There's a lot of people, myself included, who have heard her speak in person from like 20, 30 years ago at events. And she was always a effing weirdo where you'd hear her speak at an event and you look at the person next to you and go like, is she mentally ill or is she intoxicated? And I don't think it's intoxication because it would mean that like at every event she's doing lines before the event or something. No, I think she's just mentally ill. Or what do you call it, like borderline personality, where they don't understand how the stupid things they're saying are being absorbed by the audience. But then Trump 2.0 got in. What happened was if in the first term 20% of the left went crazy, in current terms, say only 5% went crazy, but they went more crazy. The rest of the left kind of seems bored of the whole thing, and they're just angry at everyone, but this is including, they're angry at the DNC for picking Biden when he had dementia in 2016. That's why I suspect he didn't, well, I mean, Hillary would have not been pleased, and you really don't want to displease Hillary. I think she's probably one of the more dangerous people on the planet. Then for making Kamala the VP, like what a horrible choice that was. Then for Biden having dementia so bad that he had to step down. And then even worse, that Kamala didn't also step down so they could put in Gavin Newsom or really anyone else. They could have put a crocodile in a dress and it would have had more charm than Kamala or Hillary, who are crazy and evil, respectively. Like all the stuff people say about Hillary, that's not just kind of right-wing memes. She actually does seem evil. I mean, she was evil back in the Nixon days. I was reading about Nixon, and she was involved in that case, and she was fired for denying him his constitutional rights to due process. So the left is probably still angry at 2016 for running Hillary or for stealing it in 2020, because if Trump won, it would have been more the same milquetoast moderate type of, like his first term where he didn't get as much done as he seems to be doing in his second or third term, depending on how you want to count it, or mad that they persecuted him for a decade because the media kept saying that they had to. So because they stole it before, now he's coming in harder with a political mandate. So it's kind of weird how history works. And perhaps you remember back to 2016 when Ann Coulter was talking to Joyless Reid and said Trump was the best chance out of all the candidates. And she got in. Ann Coulter is on Twitter right now, just dragging Joy Reid over the coals. She said Ann Coulter said she should hire Joy Reid to follow her around and make like bug-eyed facial expressions, and she played that clip. Joy Reid acted as if it was totally implausible, which a lot of left-wing people did at the time, which is something I never understood about the left, including Obama was saying like it couldn't happen. Trump was 35 years old and a born American, and I think those are the only two qualifications. He didn't have political experience, but it seems that, well, politicians are blood-sucking, corrupt parasites. Why not Trump try something different? And people were in the mood for something different. The chance was, I think DeSantis was, or maybe Rubio was the second and third possibilities in the primaries, and people looked at those guys and like, it's just more of this. Or Ted Cruz, I'm sorry. I think Ted Cruz was one of them. And people looked at that and were like, it's just more of the same. Try a real estate guy who's done some game shows. It couldn't be any worse. Trump wasn't just some guy selling AKs out of the trunk of his car in Eastern Europe. He was a businessman and a public figure. It wasn't a crazy idea to put him in office. He did have some responsibility under his belt. But a big part of why the left didn't see it coming is actually related to this article I read on, I guess I could find it in a sec, on why the left got the economy so wrong. And I think it boils down to, all right, what it boils down to is appeal to authority, assuming that they are arguing in this article in good faith. And now I didn't notice it was a political article, where they were funded by USAID, like $35 million or something, which is coming from your tax dollars to disseminate. They're always they project and everything. They're the ones who are talking about misinformation and disinformation, with Nina Jankowicz in the White House to be the Ministry of Truth, and it turns out like, oh, you guys were projecting the whole time, weren't you? Yes, they were. So what happened was the right was getting on social media and saying there are homeless tent cities literally everywhere. And there are. I'm in California. Inflation is insane. Indians and Chinese are taking the low-level jobs, and Latin Americans are taking the high-level jobs. And Latin Americans are taking the low-level jobs, and the social contract is obviously broken. The country was in serious trouble, but the left was saying the economic indicators were fine. The numbers the corrupt government and corrupt media were reporting were positive numbers, so the right was obviously lying to hurt Kamala's chance for office. We were just imagining inflation. We should be happy learning to code, or maybe installing solar panels were some of the stupid things that the Biden's press secretaries were saying over the years, or maybe enjoy the vibrant cultural enrichment and diversity of public stabbing transportation, and then get snuggled, and deleted from this mortal coil by that enrichment when the gangs could take a break from taking over apartment buildings, which was only a minor thing. A total breakdown of law and order was just a little thing. It was no reflection on the blue incompetent cities, or of course Biden or Kamala. So assuming that this article is in good faith, which is a huge stretch, because they're also going to the grocery store, but they just couldn't admit that things under Biden were a disaster. So anyway, the article comes out and admits the economy is in deep trouble because, of course, now Trump is in office, so they can admit it, and it's on Trump to try to fix the impossible. But part of the left wing is an addiction to centralized authority and power, much more so than the right's looser, more chaotic, decentralized system, where if the drug companies and government tell us that they've developed a new drug that is going to be worth billions, and that, well, yes, it's experimental and there are no long-term studies available because, unfortunately, H.G. Wells' book was just fiction, but trust the media, government, and drug companies and ignore the risks and financial interests. And we said no thanks. You can keep your experiment. And like I said, I'll gladly take it in 60 or 100 years or so after enough time has gone by to see the side effects. So the right refused to take it, and the left got their donuts, and unfortunately for them, they also got heart attacks. So, oh no, Nazis. People always died live on air. It was common for reporters to just pass out right then and there, or some athletes to die suddenly. That was a common phrase. No worries, that's normal. Just trust the drug companies. They have your best interests at heart. So even though Trump was pushing the poison apple, we declined the honor and stuck to chicken soup and Pedialyte, which is amazing when you're feeling down. The right doesn't trust authority because I suppose we've read a book or two, or maybe just understand the human nature of somebody selling you snake oil doesn't have your best interests. And part of it for the left was they had to trust the big corporate machine, sort of to prove that their tolerant, diverse societies was still a functioning high-trust society like it used to be when it was actually a white functioning high-trust society. And it's not anymore. And the left are lying to themselves, but they can't admit they're wrong, so they have to pretend to trust the lizard media and pharmaceutical companies and bars on windows and security cameras and the Glock by your bedside when you didn't need this stuff 20 years ago is just part of your strength, which is so bizarre that I can't imagine what the old left of 50 years ago would say to this. It's an interesting topic, but it can't be explored in any mainstream spaces because it's the politically incorrect topics of how diversity lowers social cohesion, the bowling alone meets 7-Eleven nationalism. Anyway, a smaller percentage of people have TDS to the extent as the first term. So what you would expect to happen is you have one party in office, but the opposition out of power, but in control of the mainstream media. So you should, or I expected to see, a big boost in audience as they prepare to spend the next 4 years and possibly 8 or 12 in total after losing their minds over Satan in the White House, and then Satan Light, I guess, with J.D. Vance and his eyeliner. But the left-wing audience didn't materialize for Joy Reid. And the rest of the mainstream media, the left more so than Fox is kind of the only exception. The audiences are just disappearing. A lot of them are tired of the whole thing that's gone into year 8 of fighting about Trump because the globalist media parasites told them to fight about him. And when you think of the free advertising, $1 billion to $2 billion in 2016 that the media did for Trump, the media are who put Trump in office in 2016. So, for a combination of reasons, Joy Reid's audience was cut in half. She was an outrage machine and an anti-white racist who talked about white tears. Then you can juxtapose that clip with her podcasting at home with her own tears running down her face because she thought she was important. She was a well-paid puppet, the puppet and not the master because the master fired her. And while Tucker was fired and actually able to shift gears into podcasting successfully, but no, he's not going to have the same reach he had on Fox, or he's going to have a different audience. But like Fox is a massive boomer audience, an aging audience, but all the mainstream media is an aging audience because Tucker actually does have some talent and can try to be unbiased. I don't think the same could be said about Joy, and she seems kind of dumb, where Tucker's not. She was crying about the 1619 Project, which is some weird hoax being pushed by some Soros-funded books and his golems, and it turns out the book was based on was absolute garbage, as bad as the Roots book, where if you remember, the guy plagiarized half the book and was actually sued and had to pay out a judgment for plagiarism. An earlier book written in 1916, I think it was called The African, and he's just another interesting story because he was a puppet like many others. They've got a narrative to maintain, and you can read the book for yourself for giggles. It's like a Wakanda Afrofuturism fantasy written by someone who thinks the Africans were having feasts every day when the wise elders weren't teaching the village children differential calculus and Jacobean sciences. In the book, the evil white devil came into the jungle, canoes into the jungle, and just is just grabbing people left and right with their white magical resistance to malaria and other diseases. I guess they never heard of the Dahomey tribe. So the mixed race space communist story she was proud to be part of were Soros blowjobs the whole time, including her babbling about BLM, which is the greatest, most pathetic cell phone in history. They spend 4 years mourning their god, the pride of their race, the best they have to offer in a sacrifice to Moloch, a junkie criminal who did an armed home invasion on a pregnant woman, so they build statues to their god, the king of black Americans, not an athlete, a musician, a scientist, just a violent criminal waste of space. They're telling the world this is the best they have to offer. An incredible, incredible cell phone. It's absolutely bizarre and pathetic, but he got multiple funerals. Remember the crying Jacob Frey they took when his city was also burning down because of BLM? They took multiple empty gold coffins around to virtue signal to the world that they're puppets and the master is laughing his ass off. So Joy was proud of her work with BLM, which is a giant grift of money laundering. It's because all this stuff goes on together that so many people have switched from the mainstream media to the alt media, including her left-wing audience. Anyway, like, comment, subscribe. See you guys all next episode.